There is a quiet exhaustion that creeps into your soul when you keep trying to prove yourself to those who never cared to see you clearly. You bend, you shine, you perform, hoping one day their eyes will open, hoping one day they'll say, "Now I understand you." But that day never comes because some people choose blindness when truth stands right in front of them. This speech is not about anger, it's about liberation. Because today, I want you to understand something. You were not born to be a presentation for other people's validation. You were born to exist in truth, not in performance. So stay with me, because before this speech ends, you will no longer feel the need to explain, convince, or prove yourself to anyone. You will walk away free. Validation is a prison disguised as approval. It comes dressed in praise, smiles, and applause, whispering that you are finally enough, but only when they say so. It begins softly, like a kind voice telling you that you matter, but over time, that voice becomes the only one you listen to. You start chasing it, needing it, depending on it to tell you who you are, and before you know it, you're living in a cage built from opinions, performing for acceptance, and losing your freedom one compliment at a time. You see, the search for validation begins innocently. We all want to be seen, understood, appreciated. There's nothing wrong with that until it becomes the reason we exist. When every action, every decision, every version of you is tailored to fit someone else's expectation, that's when the prison door locks behind you. The approval that once made you feel good now controls you. You stop asking, "What do I want?" and start asking, "What will they think?" That's how validation tricks you. It offers comfort while quietly taking away your peace. It tells you that love must be earned, that acceptance must be chased, that your worth must be proven. And so, you start to overextend yourself. You become overly kind, overly available, overly apologetic. You say yes when your heart screams no. You smile when you're breaking inside. Because somewhere along the way, you started believing that being liked was more important than being real. And yet, even when you do everything right, it's never enough. Because the ones who feed your need for validation will always raise the bar higher. They will admire your strength one day and call you intimidating the next. They will praise your kindness and then take advantage of it. That's the cycle. Approval that lifts you today but leaves you empty tomorrow. You're never free in that cycle because every time they withdraw their validation, your self-worth collapses with it. The cruelest part is how invisible the prison looks. It doesn't come with walls or chains. It comes in the form of likes, comments, compliments, promotions, and approval. It feels like love, but it's dependency. It feels like belonging, but it's submission. You start building your identity around how others react to you, forgetting that reactions change with moods, insecurities, and biases. And so your self-image becomes unstable, fragile, and conditional, always waiting for permission to feel good about yourself. But here's the truth. When you constantly seek validation, you give away the keys to your own peace. You hand them over to people who may not even understand you, people who project their fears and flaws onto you. You start wearing masks to fit their comfort zones, forgetting that authenticity is what makes you powerful. Every time you edit yourself to be accepted, you teach your soul that who you truly are isn't enough. That is the slowest kind of self-betrayal, the kind that feels like love but tastes like loss. Think of how many times you've silenced your opinions to avoid judgment, how many times you've smiled through discomfort just to keep the peace, how many times you've accomplished something beautiful and still needed someone to tell you it was worthy. That's how deep the conditioning runs. Society teaches us to measure ourselves through other people's eyes. From childhood, we are graded, compared, ranked, and somewhere in the process, We learn to depend on validation as our oxygen. But what happens when that oxygen runs out? When the applause stops? When the crowd goes home and no one's watching? That's when you meet yourself, the real you beneath the performance. And sometimes that meeting is terrifying because you realize how much of your identity was built on external noise. You realize how often you've confused approval for love and silence for rejection. But the truth is, people's approval has never defined your worth. Their recognition has never increased your value. It only gave temporary comfort to the parts of you that forgot your own power. Freedom begins the day you stop needing to be seen to know you exist. When you start validating yourself, not through ego, but through understanding. When you can look in the mirror and say, even if no one claps, I'm still proud of who I am. That's the moment the prison door swings open, because self-approval cannot be taken from you. It's built on truth, not applause. It's rooted in your own awareness of your intentions, your growth, your heart. The hardest part is unlearning the habit of seeking validation. It's uncomfortable to stop performing for others when you've been doing it for so long. You'll feel guilt, even fear, because you've tied your identity to how others see you. But that discomfort is a sign of growth. It's your spirit adjusting to freedom after years of captivity. You'll notice that when you stop depending on approval, some people will fall away because they were only attached to the version of you that served their needs. Let them go. You don't need to prove your worth to keep people who only valued your compliance. You'll also notice something beautiful. Silence will no longer scare you. You won't need constant reassurance to feel secure. You'll start trusting your own judgment, your own timing, your own heart. You'll begin to live more intentionally, not to impress, but to express. You'll realize that real love doesn't demand proof, and real connection doesn't need performance. The people who truly see you will never ask you to become smaller to fit their vision. They will recognize your light and still let you shine freely. There is an unmatched peace that comes from self-validation. It doesn't make you arrogant, it makes you whole. It doesn't make you dismiss others, it simply reminds you that their opinion is not your oxygen. The more you anchor your worth within yourself, the less others can shake it. You'll still appreciate kindness and recognition, but you'll no longer depend on it to feel alive. Validation will always knock at your door. It will come disguised as admiration, as love, as inclusion. But you'll know better now. You'll see it for what it is, a test of whether you've truly learned to belong to yourself. And each time you choose peace over performance, silence over explanation, authenticity over applause, you reclaim a piece of yourself that validation once stole. So yes, validation is a prison disguised as approval, but the lock was never on the outside. It was always on the inside, waiting for you to remember that you've had the key all along. People see only what their hearts are ready for. No matter how clearly you speak, how honestly you love, or how deeply you try to show your truth, some people will still misunderstand you, not because your message was unclear, but because their hearts are not yet open enough to receive it. Understanding doesn't begin in the mind, it begins in the heart. And if the heart is guarded by pride, fear, or pain, then even the brightest truth will look like confusion. You can pour your soul into someone's hands, but if their fingers are closed, it will fall through every time. That is one of life's hardest lessons, realizing that people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. You may see their potential, their softness, their capacity to love, but if they haven't healed the parts of them that resist love, they won't see what you see. They won't feel what you feel. You'll speak with sincerity, but it will echo off the walls of their unready hearts. Many times we exhaust ourselves trying to make others understand us. We over-explain, over-give, and overstay in places that cannot hold our truth. We think if we love harder, they'll finally see who we are. But love cannot force clarity. It can only offer it. The readiness to see must come from within. Some hearts have been wounded for so long that they see the world through layers of protection. They don't look at you as you are. They look at you through the lens of what hurt them. That's why kindness can be mistaken for manipulation, and honesty can be mistaken for cruelty. When the heart is guarded by fear, everything feels like a threat, even love. It's not your job to open another person's eyes. It's not your duty to convince them that your intentions are pure or that your heart is true. You can show them light, but they must choose to turn toward it. You can't hold their head up to the sunrise if they've grown comfortable in the dark. And it's not because they're bad, it's because the heart opens only when it feels safe to do so. Some people haven't felt safe in years. Some have never been taught that softness is strength. So they wear armor where love should be. You will meet people who are not ready for your kind of depth. They will find it overwhelming, confusing, maybe even uncomfortable. Your sincerity will mirror their own lack of it. Your openness will confront their fears. And that's why they might distance themselves, misunderstand your motives, or even make you feel like you're too much. But don't shrink yourself to fit their limits. Don't dim your light just because someone else can't handle brightness yet. The right hearts will not be blinded by your glow. They'll be guided by it. Every connection we form mirrors the state of our own heart. When someone is healed, they see love and respond with peace. When someone is hurting, they see love and respond with suspicion. The difference is not in the love, but in the readiness of the receiver. This is why two people can hear the same truth. One will grow from it, the other will reject it. It's not about intelligence, it's about emotional readiness. People understand from the level of awareness their heart allows. Sometimes we confuse unreadiness with rejection. We take it personally when someone fails to see our effort, our love, our authenticity. But unreadiness has nothing to do with our worth. A closed heart cannot recognize light, even if it's standing right in front of it. You could be everything someone once prayed for, but if they haven't healed enough to receive it, they'll push it away. They'll call it too soon, too much, or not what I expected, because their heart hasn't yet expanded to hold the kind of love you bring. This truth can hurt, especially when you care deeply. You want to help them see, to show them that not everyone is like the ones who hurt them. But forcing readiness only creates resistance. You cannot rush someone's healing. You cannot pour wisdom into a closed cup. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and allow life to become their teacher. Pain will soften them. Time will humble them. Experience will open their heart in ways your words never could. And when that happens, they may finally understand what you were trying to show them all along. Until then, you must protect your peace. You must know when to stop explaining, when to stop chasing clarity from people who have no interest in seeing clearly. Some souls are meant to cross your path only for a season, not to stay, but to teach you patience, compassion, and the art of letting go. They teach you that understanding doesn't always come when you want it to. Sometimes it comes years later, when they finally see what you meant, feel what you felt, and realize how deeply you cared. But by then, you'll have moved on. You'll have learned that love doesn't need to be proven to be true. People see only what their hearts are ready for, and that includes you too. There were times when you couldn't see someone else's worth, not because they lacked it, but because you weren't ready. We've all been blind in some way, blind to truth, to kindness, to lessons. But life has a way of softening us. Each heartbreak, each mistake, Each disappointment teaches us how to see more clearly. With every lesson, the heart expands a little more, and what once seemed confusing starts to make sense. That's how growth works, slowly, quietly, and always through the heart. When you understand this, you stop forcing things. You stop expecting everyone to meet you where you are. You start allowing people to grow at their own pace. You learn to walk away without resentment, knowing that love doesn't fail just because it wasn't received. It simply wasn't time. And one day, when their heart is ready, they'll remember your presence, your words, your light. They'll see it for what it was, not manipulation, not pressure, but genuine care. That's why it's important to keep your heart open even after being misunderstood. Don't let the blindness of others make you lose your clarity. Keep loving, but love wisely. Give, but give where it's valued. Speak truth, but only where ears are willing to listen. Some will never understand, and that's okay. Understanding was never your responsibility. Your only task is to remain authentic, to continue seeing with a heart that's ready, even if others aren't. Because the world needs people who can see beyond their wounds. It needs hearts that are awake enough to recognize beauty, kindness, and truth. Be one of those hearts. Be the reminder that even when others can't see, light still exists. And one day, when they're ready, they will finally see it too. Your worth is not up for debate. It was never meant to be something that others get to decide, measure, or argue about. You were born with it, not because of what you've done, not because of who you please, but because you exist. The tragedy is that so many of us spend years believing our value depends on what others think. We hand over our confidence to the approval of the world and then wonder why we always feel uncertain. But your worth is not a vote. It's not something that fluctuates when someone rejects you or rises when they applaud you. It simply is unshakable, unchangeable, and wholly yours. From the moment you start to see yourself through the eyes of others, you begin to lose sight of who you truly are. You start questioning your own essence, wondering if you're good enough, beautiful enough, talented enough. You become a performer in your own life, adjusting your voice, your choices, your dreams, all to fit into the expectations of people who might never even understand your soul. You stop living and start auditioning as if you must earn a seat in the world's theater. But you don't need to prove your value, you need to remember it. Your worth doesn't increase with attention or decrease with neglect. It doesn't depend on who stays or who leaves. It doesn't rise when someone compliments you or fall when someone criticizes you. The opinions of others are only reflections of their own perceptions, not mirrors of your truth. If someone cannot see your light, that doesn't mean you've dimmed. It means they're standing in their own shadow. Still, it's easy to forget this. The world teaches us to seek validation before understanding. From the time we're young, we're taught to be graded, compared, approved. Our confidence becomes tied to grades, likes, titles, relationships, everything external. And when those things falter, we feel lost, like we've failed to maintain our worth. But self-worth isn't maintained, it's realized. It's the quiet awareness that you are enough even when nothing looks like success. It's knowing that you matter even when no one claps. There will be people who try to make you question your worth. They'll make you feel small, intentionally or not, because they haven't made peace with their own insecurities. Sometimes their lack of self-acceptance will manifest as control, criticism, or rejection. They'll act like you have to earn their kindness, their respect, their love, as if it's something they're entitled to distribute based on your behavior. But don't be fooled. Their treatment of you says more about them than it ever will about you. You don't have to engage in their misunderstanding of who you are. You don't have to lower yourself to convince them of your goodness. The truth doesn't need convincing, it just needs living. When you know your worth, You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You begin to understand that protecting your energy is not arrogance. It's self-respect. You begin to move differently because you're no longer begging for belonging. You understand that what's meant for you will never require you to beg for recognition. It takes courage to reach that place because the world won't make it easy. It will constantly tell you that your value lies in what you can produce, in how much you can give, in how well you can please. But if you listen closely, there's a softer, truer voice within you that's been trying to speak all along. The voice that says, you are already enough. That's the voice of your spirit, the one that existed long before the world told you to earn your existence. There will be moments when you feel invisible. You'll give your best, love with all you have, and still not be seen. You'll wonder if maybe you should have tried harder, spoken louder, or been someone different. But remember, the inability of others to recognize your worth does not mean it's gone. Sometimes people simply don't have the eyes to see it. Some only recognize value when it serves their needs. Don't let their blindness define your beauty. Don't let their silence make you forget your sound. You will meet people who mistake your kindness for weakness, your honesty for arrogance, your boundaries for distance. But let them misunderstand. You are not here to convince anyone of your value. You are here to live it. Your worth isn't validated through how others receive you. It's expressed through how you carry yourself, even when you are not received at all. You are not here to be chosen by everyone. You are here to honor yourself enough to know that not being chosen by some is protection, not punishment. Because when you live from your worth, you stop chasing places where you were never meant to fit. You stop begging for clarity in situations meant to confuse you. You stop apologizing for your sensitivity, your dreams, your standards. You begin to see that what makes you different is not a flaw to hide, but a strength to embrace. When you know your worth, rejection becomes redirection. You stop seeing loss as proof that you weren't enough and start seeing it as proof that you were too much for the wrong space. You learn to bless the departures because they make room for people and opportunities that recognize your value without needing persuasion. You realize that peace feels better than validation ever could. There's a certain kind of power that rises in you when you stop arguing with people about your value. You start speaking less and observing more. You start walking away from anything that makes you question your own reflection. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "Why am I trying to convince someone who doesn't see me?" And slowly, your spirit begins to breathe again. You realize that self-worth is not loud, it's quiet. It doesn't need to shout to prove anything. It simply stands firm, unshaken, knowing it is enough. And when you reach that place of knowing, you begin to treat yourself differently. You stop settling for half love, half effort, half presence. You stop accepting apologies that come without change. You stop giving your time to people who drain you and start offering it to the things that nourish your soul. You understand that not everyone deserves access to your softness and that protecting your heart doesn't make you cold, it makes you wise. You'll notice your standards rising, not because you become arrogant, but because you finally remembered your worth. You'll walk differently, you'll speak differently, you'll think differently, and those who are meant for you will recognize it instantly. They'll see your value without needing to test it. They'll meet your energy with equal effort, not resistance. Because when you stop debating your worth, you start attracting people who no longer question it either. It is a lifelong journey, this process of remembering who you are. You'll forget sometimes. The world will still try to pull you back into its noise, to make you believe your worth is negotiable. But every time you choose peace over proving, truth over approval, and self-respect over acceptance, You strengthen the roots of your confidence. You become unshakable. So let them talk. Let them assume. Let them misunderstand. None of it changes who you are. None of it changes the value that was placed inside you before anyone had the power to name it. You are not defined by the love you receive or the validation you miss. You are defined by the quiet knowing that you have always been enough. Your worth is not up for debate. It never was. It lives within you, steady, whole, and untouched by the noise of the world. The day you stop waiting for someone else to see it is the day you begin to truly live. Silence speaks louder than explanation. There comes a point when words no longer carry the power they once did. When defending yourself, proving your intentions, or trying to correct someone's misunderstanding feels like shouting into the wind. You realize that silence has a language of its own, a language that doesn't beg to be heard but demands to be understood. Silence doesn't argue. It doesn't chase. It doesn't explain itself away. It simply is, and within that stillness lies a strength that words often fail to hold. There are moments in life when no explanation will ever be enough. You can speak your truth with clarity and compassion, and still someone will twist it to fit their story. You can show your heart in its purest form, and still they'll choose to see it through the lens of their pain. You'll exhaust yourself trying to fix misunderstandings, only to realize that some people don't want to understand. They want to remain comfortable in their version of the truth, and that's when silence becomes your greatest ally. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means wisdom. It means you've learned that peace is more valuable than proving a point. It means you understand that sometimes people don't need your words. They need your absence to recognize their noise. You start to see that constantly explaining yourself is a subtle way of asking for permission to be believed, and you no longer need that. You no longer crave to be right in every eye because you've learned that truth doesn't lose its power when it's unacknowledged. Truth stands tall, whether spoken or kept quiet. When you choose silence, you reclaim your energy. You stop handing your peace to conversations that go nowhere. You stop engaging with people who listen to reply instead of understand. You stop feeling the need to justify every decision, every boundary, every feeling. You begin to understand that explanations are for clarity, not validation. And if someone cannot see your intentions from your actions, no amount of words will make them see it any clearer. There is a kind of maturity that comes when you stop defending your character in every misunderstanding. You realize that time reveals everything, not your words, but your consistency, your peace, your absence. Sometimes silence is not the lack of response. It's a statement that says, I'm done explaining myself to those committed to misunderstanding me. It's a quiet declaration that says, I know who I am and I no longer need to prove it. Silence is not passive. It's powerful. It's the quiet choice to let truth speak in its own time. It's the understanding that people hear only what their hearts are ready for. Some will understand your silence more deeply than they ever understood your words. Because silence carries a vibration. It reflects dignity, boundaries, and calm. It says, I will not fight for recognition from those who are blind to my sincerity. You'll notice how silence changes everything. Arguments that once drained, you now lose their appeal. The urge to defend yourself fades. You find peace in knowing that those who truly know you don't need explanations, and those who demand them will never be satisfied. You stop overthinking how to be understood and start resting in being authentic, because silence has a way of filtering what doesn't belong. It shows who was connected to your noise and who was connected to your essence. It takes strength to stay silent when your ego wants to react. It takes grace to resist the temptation of explaining your side of the story. You'll want to speak up, to make things right, to show that you're not what they think, but you'll learn that silence protects what words can't. Sometimes defending yourself only invites more misunderstanding. Sometimes the only way to win the argument is to not participate in it. Silence also teaches you discernment. You begin to see that not every question deserves an answer. Not every attack deserves a defense. Not every wound deserves exposure. You start responding less and observing more. You learn to conserve your energy for the people and places that see you clearly without needing to be convinced. Silence teaches you the difference between explaining and oversharing, between peacekeeping and self-abandonment. You'll also realize that silence heals. When you stop explaining, you give space for understanding to grow naturally. You allow time to do what words could not. You create room for perspective, for yourself and for others. Silence helps you step back, breathe, and observe without reacting. It gives you clarity to see what's worth your effort and what's simply not. In silence, you begin to listen, not just to others, but to yourself. You start hearing your own intuition more clearly. You start recognizing the difference between noise and wisdom, reaction and reflection. You begin to see that the most powerful answers often arrive when you stop talking and start feeling. You learn that not every emotion needs expression. Some only need understanding. There's a peace that comes from choosing silence over explanation. It's the peace of knowing that your integrity doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion. It's the calm that comes when you stop fighting battles that don't lead to peace. You learn to trust that your truth will stand even if no one speaks for it. Because truth, when rooted in authenticity, doesn't fade in silence, it deepens. And silence is not always about walking away. Sometimes it's about standing still with grace. It's about choosing to let others reveal themselves while you remain centered. It's about trusting that the universe hears what you didn't say out loud. Silence carries an energy that words cannot match. It holds dignity, power, and restraint. It teaches you patience and confidence in your own knowing. The more you grow, the more you realize that silence is not emptiness. It's space. It's the sacred pause between reaction and wisdom. It's where clarity blooms. It's where peace whispers. It's where self-respect lives. You stop needing to prove your point because you finally understand that truth doesn't fear being misunderstood. Those who are meant to understand you will, and those who aren't never will, no matter how many explanations you give. So you let silence become your language. You let it protect you where words can't. You let it hold your dignity when the world tries to shake it. You understand that silence speaks louder than explanation because it doesn't just communicate, it reveals. It shows who's patient enough to listen, who's wise enough to observe, and who's strong enough to stay calm when misunderstood. And in that stillness, you find something words could never give: peace. Those who truly see you don't need proof. They don't need explanations, performances, or constant reminders of your worth. They just know. They feel it in your energy, they sense it in your presence, and they understand it without words. Real connection doesn't require convincing. It doesn't ask you to prove your goodness, your loyalty, or your love. It simply recognizes your heart and accepts it as it is. There's a deep peace that comes when you finally realize that the people who truly see you will never ask you to shrink, perform, or defend who you are. They won't make you question your worth or your intentions. They won't test your loyalty or doubt your sincerity. They just know. And that kind of knowing is rare, but when it finds you, it feels like home. You spend so much of your life trying to be understood, trying to make people see your heart clearly. You explain, you justify, you give more than you should, thinking maybe this time they'll understand what you meant, what you felt, what you gave, but not everyone has the capacity to see you. Some people only see what fits their comfort, their expectations, or their insecurities. They'll judge your silence as arrogance, your kindness as weakness, your boundaries as rejection, because they can only interpret you from the limits of their own perception. And that's why proof never works. You can give someone every reason to trust you, and they'll still doubt you if they live from fear. You can show love in 1,000 ways, and they'll still question your intentions if their heart isn't ready to receive it. You could pour your truth into words, but if their mind is clouded with assumptions, all they'll hear is noise. Some people can only see you through the fog of their wounds. It's not your fault, and it's not your job to clear it for them. Those who truly see you don't look through the lens of their pain. They look with the clarity of their soul. They recognize the light in you because they've made peace with their own. They understand your silence, your distance, your struggles, without needing you to explain every detail. They don't demand perfection from you. They honor your humanness. They don't ask you to prove your love. They feel it in your consistency. You'll notice that when you meet such people, something inside you relaxes. You stop overthinking your words, your tone, your timing. You stop feeling like you have to earn their trust or fight for their understanding. You feel safe being quiet, raw, imperfect. You can be tired and still be loved, flawed and still be respected, misunderstood yet still believed in. That's the beauty of being seen by the right souls. You don't have to perform to be valued, you just have to be. But until you experience that kind of acceptance, it's easy to fall into the trap of proving yourself. You'll keep trying to fix misunderstandings, to convince people who have already made up their minds about you. You'll drain yourself trying to show your worth to those who only see fragments of your truth. You'll think if you just try harder, love louder, or explain deeper, they'll finally get it. But they won't. Not because you failed to express yourself, but because their perception was never open to receive you in the first place. You can't teach someone to see you if they are committed to misunderstanding you. You can't force connection where empathy is missing. You can't prove your soul's intentions to someone who only listens for evidence that supports their doubts. The more you try, the more you'll lose pieces of yourself in the process. Some people don't see your value because they're not meant to. And that's okay. Their inability to recognize your worth doesn't mean it's gone. It only means they weren't ready for your kind of truth. It's a form of wisdom to stop explaining yourself, to stop overgiving just to be understood, to stop fighting for space in hearts that have no room for you. When you realize that those who truly see you don't need proof, you start protecting your energy from those who demand it endlessly. You stop seeking closure from those who refuse to listen. You begin to move with quiet confidence, knowing that your presence speaks louder than your explanations ever could. The ones who truly see you will notice things you never say. They'll feel your love even in your silence. They'll sense your intentions in